Barrett to the preview.
Now we're delighted to be joined this evening by John O'Shea of The Echo in Cork, a freelance sports journalist also. How are you doing, John? Nice of you to join us.
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for having me on.
We're here to preview tonight, John, the Treaty United and Cobh Ramblers game in the Electricity League First Division. Promises to be a very interesting game, John. Coming into the game, both sides in contrasting form, to say the least. Obviously, Treaty picked up what people may say is a surprising 4 points from 6 in their opening encounters, and obviously Cobh suffering 2 defeats. What's the mood like in the Cobh Ramblers camp at the moment?
Yeah, I'd say I was just like a press conference there before the game there, just before I came on tea. I'd say there's I'd say they want to kind of put things right now. Tomorrow night, I'd say it because I'd say the UCD performance, I'd say by the standards that they'd be kind of setting themselves down in Cobh, I'd say this wasn't anywhere near where they'd be targeting last Saturday night. And it was interesting because, going in, especially because after going into what was so disappointing, I suppose, going into the UCD game was the Cork City game, the first 9 Turner's Cross. The performance was so good, arguably Cobh could have got at least a draw, if not the 3 points, there was kind of encouragement out of that. But then going into the UCD game, then it was like, I suppose they didn't build on this, albeit even for the first half an hour against UCD, it was probably a fairly an even Steven kind of a game, but as soon as UCD scored the first goal, it was like the switch of a light, it was just, it kind of was complete one-way traffic from there, really, So I'd say because even the mood in the camp as well, they'd be really looking to maybe try to go the extra step further after missing out nearly on goal difference last year. They'd be hoping to maybe have a push at the playoffs again. So the start is they'd be hoping to maybe kind of get the results right now in the coming weeks,
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, absolutely chalk and cheese performances between the Cork game in Turner's Cross to the UCD game. Obviously, the two sides they were playing would be very high-profile sides as well, John, by First Division standards, Cork and UCD. Probably one of the more worrying aspects for Stuart Ashton as well will be the defensive situation. You've conceded 6 goals in the opening 2 games, and they conceded just 20 in the whole of last season in the 18 games that they happened last year.
Yeah, it's it's kind of bizarre one because as you said, they had one of I think the top 3, top 4 in the league last year in terms of defensive records. They brought in a keeper from the Munster Senior League, Sean Barron, and he kept a load of clean sheets in the second half of last season. So it was really, I suppose they concede so many so soon, as you point out, it's probably out of character in that sense. But it was I'd say, and then probably to be open for a similar last season, they actually lost by heavier. The last 6 in the home to UCD last season, actually around September, and then they kind of put themselves they're back against the wall. They had to go to the and they went to the likes of Drogheda and Longford, and they managed to pick up wins I suppose there were must-win scenarios, so their backs were kind of against the wall. But I suppose, given the way the First Division is this year, you probably don't want to be kind of putting yourself in the kind of scenario where you have to going away to the likes of a Bray or Shelburne, needing to pick up the 3 points. I suppose you have I suppose the key thing with the First Division this year, I suppose, is to kind of to keep just keeping the chasing pack, or just keeping in touching distance, if you know what I mean. So. Definitely, I'd say the defensive definitely wouldn't be of the levels that they would expect, really, because it cost them high against Cork City as well, going back to the first game, because arguably for most of the game they probably were near the better side, to be honest. But it was just kind of 2 defensive errors, really, and then Cork City scored the 2 goals, and they went away to 3 points. So definitely, I'd say they want to eradicate that. Definitely, probably, especially the soft goals now going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not a hallmark of the Cobh sides all through the past, really. Another situation that seems to be concerning some people in Cobh and in the Cobh camp is the fact that maybe towards the back end of last season, John, and obviously now in the first game of this season, is the home form at Collins Park. Now, I know we have a Limerick Sport Limerick soccer podcast every week with Noel and Jason O'Connor, and we all promoted the fact that St. Coleman's Park is a very difficult place to go. Well, always has been notoriously historically, and that would be one thing you'd certainly need to get right, much like Treaty, is your home farm in this division. Like you mentioned, you don't want to be putting pressure on yourself then to have to go to the likes of Tolka Park and DC Park to pick up results. So home farm is definitely vital.
Absolutely, and it probably turned out to be probably Cove's probably Achilles heel. It probably cost them probably last season. Said they dropped a lot of points at home. Like probably they could have got a draw, games they could have drawn and won. And when you think about really, obviously the away form really pushed them up and catapulted them so close to the playoffs. And I think it was only a Shane Duggan goal up in Galway the last night of the season. Really, that was they ended up being the difference between the making the players not at the end.
Yeah.
So it's probably outkilled because traditionally, probably when Cobh had good kind of runs, when they won the first division back in 2007, and then more recently, under Stephen Henderson, when they made the playoffs and they came second in 2017 to Waterford, but I think the league was being restructured. The team that finished first went up that year. But the seasons that they would be up near the top of the table, the home farm has always been good, and it's been a bit of a fortress. And that I suppose even the fact that having no fans as well, probably it's a bit of a for all teams really, But I remember even down in Cobh around 2018 when they played Dundalk, and it really, that the League Cup semi-final, it really drove them on the last 15-20 minutes when they had the 1-0 lead. And I suppose it's the same for clubs all around the country really, it kind of levels out the home advantage, I suppose. It doesn't even with no fans being there, hopefully supporters can get in over the coming months and towards the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it yourself there, about the home farm almost being eradicated as a contributing factor to victories now, because you see it in England as well. It's been a record season for away wins in the English Premiership. So obviously that's a bit of a problem for clubs who are reliant on their home farm. Also as well, there's extra spice, John, to the game tomorrow evening as well, with a couple of ex-Cobh lads involved with Treaty, and then you've got with Charlie Fleming and Anthony O'Donnell, and then you also have 4 ex-Limerick FC players. I know Treaty now is a new entity, but there's a lot of familiarity with players and with Lee Devity and Turner, Darren Murphy, and also Dave O'Leary further back playing with Cobh, who actually started all across the midfield 4 last Saturday against UCD. It's a strange one here in Limerick. We'll be hoping to see maybe. We saw 2 sides of both, particularly Darren Murphy and Ian Turner when they were here in Limerick. Darren started off really well in 2018, didn't have a great season in 2019, especially towards the back end of it. And then you also have Ian Turner, who was unplayable in 2015 when we went on a really big run at Limerick FC to stay in the division. And then we'd probably be hoping to see maybe the 2017 Ian Turner, where he struggled and was devoid of confidence. But they are key players for Cobh, and Cobh will certainly need them at their best, John.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, the experience, that's the one thing with Cobh this year as well, Last year, even as close as they got to the playoffs, towards the latter end of last season, it was probably they were kind of nearly bringing up lads from the 19s, to fill up the bench for some games, Whereas this season, probably on paper, it's one of the strongest squads that Cobh have probably got together on paper over the last couple of years. There's a greater balance between probably youth and experience this year, maybe compared to some other seasons, and the likes of Dave O'Leary and Darren Murphy would bring that kind of league. They have significant League of Ireland experience under the belt, The likes of Dave O'Leary, obviously, I think he got promoted. I think he would have got promoted with Limerick in 2012.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, in 2012. Yeah.
And obviously, I think he was second in 2014 with Cork City, the year John Coffey, when they've been close to winning the league that season. So that kind of experience it will be vital for Cobh this year, I think, and what is an ultra competitive first division. And even there's plenty of connections. You were saying on both teams. He's one, even a fella who'll be very familiar to you up in Limerick, Lee Devis. He was probably one of Cobh's most consistent, they were good performers last season. He had a good kind of work ethic, and I'd say he'd be another player if Cobh are going to have a good season. He'll be one. I'd say if they're going to have a good season, he'll be one of their key players.
Yeah, they call him the silent assassin, his teammates and his manager, John, when he was with Limerick FC, because apparently he didn't talk an awful lot. He was a young player and he didn't talk an awful lot off the pitch, but when he got on the field, he was fully committed and would fly into tackles. I suppose one of the big things for Cobh, like if you're looking at it from a Cobh point of view now, also you're also looking at Treaty United and saying they haven't lasted a whole 90 minutes yet with 11 men on the field. We had Sean McSweeney sent off in the first game against Bray. We Clyde O'Connell sent off in the second game. And you might be targeting that, maybe, a bit of gamesmanship off the ball and saying, are a few of these lads highly strung, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I suppose even, and the fact as well, there's so many familiar faces on both sides as well. Like, a lot of them, like Joe, even Ant O'Donnell, he would have played a number of years down in Cobh, and like, he was there when they got to the playoffs that time, and obviously Charlie Fleming is from Cobh as well, so he'll know a lot of the lads fairly well, and like the management, Stuart Ashton, and I think the main thing for Cobh, and just touching on even what Stuart Ashton was saying in the build up to the game this week, I'd say, and Darryl Walsh as well, the Republic, he was in the Irish under-17s a couple of years ago under Conor O'Brien when they got knocked out by England in the quarter final, but. Yeah, like what they were basically saying was I'd say they're looking for a reaction, and it's like last week against UCD wasn't good enough, and I'd say they've had the kind of clear the air kind of talk, like what went wrong, and I'd say they don't want that to happen again this season. What happened against UCD, so I'd say they're hoping to put it right now tomorrow night in the Markets Field, and like they probably need to really, because like the way the first division is going this year, you probably don't want to be falling too far adrift towards the bottom, even at this early stage of the season.
Yeah, definitely not. And you'd certainly feel that out of the two teams, there's obviously a lot more pressure on Cobh, because probably a bit more expected, as you said, of Cobh anyway than Treaty this year. It's almost in some ways like a free hit for Treaty, even though there will be expectations within the squad and among us in the media, I suppose. The one thing I noticed was a sense of bravery, though, John, in the game against UCD. And I know there was bits of it in Cork as well. There was a lot of chances from Cobh created in Cork, but starting off with 4-4-2 formation with Conor Droynan and Kieran Griffin up front. Now, I know Kieran Griffin, who had a good chance in the first game, he also would say he also had started well against UCD, and maybe they drifted out because they didn't have much of the ball. But he has made a good start coming up from Cobh Wanderers, I believe.
He is. Oh, actually, he has indeed. He really he led the line brilliantly in Turner's Cross. He's the kind of fella he'd be constantly running, and his work rate is excellent. And he's the kind of fella who's been highly rated down the Cobh direction for the last couple of years. Like he's only 19, but I'd say for the last even season 2C, couple of seasons, he's been playing for Cobh Ramblers in the Munster Senior League. So like he's definitely been one that's been kind of highly kind of touted over the last couple of years, and I'd say he's keen to obviously make the impact at this level now, and there's a couple of young lads like similar in that kind of scenario. There's a young lad, I think he's out for suspension now tomorrow night, but Caelan Rooney, he was on the books of Ipswich Town a couple of years ago, and like I'd say he was nearly falling out of love with the game from what I could gather. So I'd say he's hoping maybe to kind of get back on the ladder, I suppose, down in Ramblers, and like it's probably even there's a lot of talk, even just thinking the squad as a whole there, even though there's a lot of new signings coming this year, I'd say the key thing from a Ramblers perspective was even the key signings were the players that they kept. Normally player turnover would be a big problem maybe at the end of every season, though there'll always be a few really going, but David Hurley going to Galway, most of the spots from last year stayed. I think the one like Charlie Lyons in particular, at centre back, he's I'd say he'd be up there, one of the top probably centre backs in the first division last year. And like from what I could gather, they'd say there would have been interest, I'd say, from other clubs, in the off season. But like the fact, I think even the Premier Division as well, from what I understand. But I'd say the fact that most of the players stayed as well, it shows maybe the progression that the club have been making generally, and that the squad feel that they can make that extra step and get into the playoffs at least, win the Cobh,
Yeah, and as you said, it might be the right season, to do that, because it's going to be so open. But there is a pressure there now, John, for Cobh tomorrow evening, because as you said, if you lose that game tomorrow night against Treaty, and let's be honest, even though Stuart Ashton and people in Cobh may not say this publicly, it's certainly a game when you looked at your opening 3 fixtures, we'll say, you certainly would be saying, right, well, we have to win in Limerick against Treaty, a newly formed team, even if they sign quite well. And obviously Tommy Barrett will downplay expectations down here, we know that, and put maybe more of the pressure on Cobh. But there is a slight bit more pressure now. And do you expect, because of that maybe Stuart Ashton will go in and be brave and maybe select a 4-4-2 again? Because obviously you'll need Conor Drynan now to step up as well to the plate and score goals. That'll be vital for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing maybe as well this year, that the likes of, and I think he has the potential to step up as well, Conor Drynan, but even before he came to Cobh, like he scored 25 goals as an 18, 19-year-old in the Munster Senior League for Carrigaline United. So he was kind of scoring goals, like, so was it in men's football, like, and obviously his brother is over at Ipswich, in Aaron Drynan. So, but like, yeah, I think that's one issue. I think this year, if Cobh are going to probably make it, if they do want to go the extra step further, with the bar being raised in the first division this year or even higher as well, they're going to have to kind of get more goals, especially in the attacking third of the pitch. Like, I suppose you could see maybe last year how the issue in it, because their top scorer was Charlie Lyons, who's a centre back. Like, so that's probably, it's definitely, I suppose, it's a sign that there's definitely room for them to improve in this season. And realistically, when you see, because like it's probably the highest level that the first division has been at in years, really. When you look at the standard of players and in the league and the number of teams that are even going full time in it, it's going to be vital for Cobh definitely to get goals in the attacking third, and from the likes of Griffin and Drynan and other attacking players. And I suppose they'll be hoping to do that now, maybe starting tomorrow night in the Markets Field.
Yeah, Tommy Barrett mentioned about, you're trying to make the Markets Field a bit of a fortress, because, to be honest, with all due respect to Coleman's Park, which is, I love Coleman's Park in that it's an old-fashioned type ground, League of Ireland ground, the Markets Field hasn't got that aura about it. Teams will see the pitch when they arrive, will see it stand and say, well, I fancy this tonight, rather than if they go to Coleman's on a wet night, or, it might not be so appealing to them. But, Treaty have also struggled slightly in an attacking sense. They've been very solid defensively. They've got 1 goal in 2 games, and that came from a set piece. So much like Cobh, defensive solidity is massive for them, and you'd hope to see more in an attacking sense. But in terms of the whole division, as you said, it's going to be very topsy-turvy. I was actually looking at the fixtures for tomorrow, and I was saying, geez, it's going to be hard to really pick a winner from games. You could put a case forward for almost everybody. It's like in our soccer podcast, I had predicted that Cabinteely finished bottom, and now so far they're top of the league. It's been a great start, actually, John, for both Cabinteely and Athlone Town, who were predicted to kind of struggle. I know there was a lot of expectation in Athlone, and that was brought on about from them themselves. They were saying, they feel like they should be up there with the squad. It was people outside that were saying maybe not so much. But it has been a brilliant start for Athlone, and not many people would have seen that result against Galway coming last week either.
No, absolutely. I mean, absolutely not. The fact when you see Galway, the obviously like the full time outfit they are like, and the squad they have, John Caulfield and Lisa Fallon, 2 excellent coaches. Really, it might take people, maybe I'd say it was the standout result of last weekend, but like, I suppose, like, I think looking at Athlone squad as well, I'd say they really have a decent squad, and it probably shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did when I saw the result last week in Athlone, because like the Athlone squad, they have a lot of experience, a lot of quality, but they have a lot of experience as well in terms of lads who won the first division in the last couple of seasons, between the likes of Drogheda, Shelburne, and then they've signed lads from like Bray and Cabinteely who have been challenging for promotion as well. So like I'm not 100% sure where they've got the bit of investment from, like, but they really, I think they'll be, from what I saw of the game against Galway, the highlights, they definitely look like they'll be up there. I think UCD will be strong. I think as well they could be potential dark horses even for the title. They really in the attacking sense, the likes of Liam Kerrigan from Sligo, Colin Whelan as well. I think he was one of their top scorers in the first division last year.
Yeah, myself and Maddie had a big partnership actually. Yeah, scoring nearly 50 goals between them or something along those lines, if I remember right.
But I think they were scoring goals for fun, and like even when Maddie going to Shelburne, they still look like they'll score a lot of goals this season, and like they were very solid at the back, like even from last Saturday night down in Cobh, like Griffin, he probably as good the impact he had in the Cork City game. He didn't get the service in last week, and that might have been as good as UCD were really. They signed the guy, I think Sam Todd from Finn Harps as well. So like I'd say they'll be thereabouts. But like it's literally like I found trying to in terms of predicting for the first division myself overall, it's like it was nearly like it's like trying to do the lotto, trying to predict who's going to get into the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise you to see any side in the division end up in the playoffs or the promotion. Really, it's such a competitive league, and I think I said it already, Joe. It's probably the highest standard and probably most competitive, highest standard first division that there's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, you could certainly put a case forward for anyone, because even last week Wexford may have lost the game against Treaty, but they created a lot of chances and played some very good football. So there will be a lot of teams like that will be vying for even that final playoff place at least anyway. And there should be, you'd imagine, a lot of interest going into those playoff places with the amount of them there towards the end of the season. One very big positive for Cobh, and what turned out to be a negative for Treaty, John, was actually the quality of the streaming service last week. I have to say I watched that Cobh and UCD game back. Didn't seem to be any glitches really. You'll always get with the unmanned cameras, you'll always get that jolt where it kind of seems to go all of a sudden from one end of the pitch to the other. But that was fairly rare at Coleman's Park. At the Markets Field, there was a lot of issues in terms of we have a playback issue here, then it would come off and come back in. There was a lot of, the coverage was fairly quirky. At times the commentary was there, but this quality issue. So obviously that was a disappointment. But I'm assuming people are very happy in Cobh with the quality of their one.
I think it might be all accounts. I think that was probably the one positive from last week was probably in terms of the service and even the commentary as well. They had a guy, John Cashman, who people might know from doing kind of GA commentaries on Cork's kind of C103 FM. He kind of did a fairly good commentary from what I would listening back. Well, obviously I was at the game, so I wasn't listening to it live, but I kind of played bits of it back afterwards. In terms of the highlights. But it's interesting the whole the concept. You wonder if these glitches don't get ironed out, what'll happen in the coming weeks and months, because the first division clubs themselves last season were kind of up to they were kind of left to their own devices when the games restarted, and their own productions were of fairly good quality. A couple Longford is one club that came to my mind there now, but across the board, all the clubs did fairly good doing their own streaming and commentary. But whereas this season now, I've heard a couple of kind of instances, like even you set up with Treaty's game last week. I think even from down here, as I leave at Cork City, there are two games. I think the game against Cobh, I think there was a bit of issues, and I think they had to show the second half on YouTube, and even I think up in Cabinteely last week as well. The game I was watching, I think they had to end up showing on Cabinteely's Facebook page in the end. So these kind of issues, I'm hoping anyway. It's only with the LOI service, it's only kind of teething problems, and hopefully they'll kind of iron themselves out as the weeks go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I know that I think that another couple of clubs had to go and switch to YouTube channels because of the problems, which is a bit of an issue. It's a pity for the clubs, obviously, because as you said, when they are allowed their own devices, they've had a very good service. But look, also not to put too much of a negative on it, it's also great for us to be able to actually watch matches from other grounds as well in the first division, which is unheard of for us in the past. And obviously very good for managers and coaches too. Another one, John, I don't know if you ever saw the footage of this. Probably not. It didn't exactly go viral, but I hope that if Cobh get a penalty tomorrow, that Darren Murphy doesn't try another Panenka penalty that he did try for us against Shelburne a couple of years ago, and it went absolutely horribly wrong. It could have been up there on the YouTube sensational clips, and I know that Tommy Barrett wasn't happy at the time, but I hope he's not on penalty duty if he tries that again.
Yeah, I think actually remember I had time actually on Twitter or something, but they definitely say that it's probably saying I think he might be on set piece actually for Ringmahon, the most senior league, but he actually did fairly well there. That's the top thing off the top of my mind. And like I'd say it was good. I'd say if I don't know, it was a good signing for Cobh in the sense to bring him in with the experience and this, that kind of it kind of leveled out the whole maybe the youth and the experience, because maybe one thing maybe look at the last couple of years when maybe was kind of down covering Cobh, even and it was and how well did it actually even under Stephen Henderson when they got to the League Cup final. It was a very young squad that day as well. I'd say bar maybe one or two players like Paul Hunt in goals and Ian Moyla fullback. I'd say the majority of the players are only, I'd say, maybe 20, 22, 23 or younger. So it was a very young. So I'd say definitely it's going to be vital. I think you can see that balance there, and so even the likes of John Cavan as well, who would be who'd have great experience under his belt, in terms of the years he was with Cork City, and even he got promoted with Finn Harps in the first division as well. So I think it's going to be vital, I think, for Cobh this year as well, to have those kind of leaders in the dressing room and lads who know what it's like to kind of get down or get up and challenge up near the top of the first division.
Yeah, John, and on a final note, I suppose I spoke about it with Noel and Jason on our podcast, and we were speaking about it a couple of weeks ago after it broke. We were talking to our boss about it, and we said, look, Stuart Ashton is the manager. He's done a good job, obviously, with Cobh. There's been talks that maybe a year down the line they're going to try and implement, because he's on the FAI staff, they're going to try and implement a situation where he will no longer be able to form or manage Cobh in that capacity. Has there been any more update on that, and is that a worry for the club at the moment?
I'd say in terms of I'd say for now, I'd say I think the club, I'd say officially, I'd say from what I can gather, I think they're not making any more kind of commenting until there's kind of discussions. I think with the FAI, I think that's what I can understand anyway. But I think ultimately, as you said, it's probably going to be something definitely in come October, November. It's probably going to be something that they'll have to probably iron out, or address. But it's probably, you could see the progression that the club have made. They've made excellent progression off the pitch. There's an excellent committee down there at the moment, and I'd say in terms of the stuff they're doing on social media and community initiatives down around the area, with local charities and whatever. I'd say that in terms of the kind of the positive vibes off the club, I'd say it's probably as good as it's been in the while down in Cobh. So that they've made great progress off the pitch, and even on the pitch as well. Stuart Ashton has, he's very, I suppose, down here, be well respected down in Cork, in terms of underage development and developing players. I suppose notably even with Cork City, that he started a lot of the careers he would have worked with the likes of City. He would have worked with Alan Brown, Shane Long, Kevin Long, David Moyler. He would have coached and developed a lot of them at City, and now they went on to play obviously for Ireland, have great careers across the water in England. So I'd say definitely it's something. It wasn't ideal probably for I'd say the club to be hearing or to kind of get wind of that heading into the start of the season. But I think obviously Athlone are in a similar position actually.
I think Carberry, so the timing of the announcements definitely could have been better. All right, John, that's for sure.
So I'd say it just seems I'd say from Mike, it's all systems go really, and it's just all about trying to have a good season, push up near the top of the table, and then I'd say hopefully, maybe that something that maybe hopefully just, I'd say it will be sorted out maybe in the coming months.
Yeah, well, I do hope that Cobh improve their season or their results. I also hope, John, that it won't be tomorrow, and hope that Treaty manage to continue their own unbeaten run. But thanks very much for joining us, John. It was a great chatting to you and a great insight into the football at Cobh at the moment on a number of levels. And who knows, we may be speaking to you on a number of occasions between Cobh and Cork throughout the season yet to come.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. And it's great to have Treaty, I suppose, for a League of Ireland. It's great to have kind of League of Ireland football back in Limerick as well, and it's exciting to see what Treaty are doing and trying to build the club and the foundations. And I look forward to seeing the club grow in the coming years as well, I suppose, as a League of Ireland follower generally as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly look forward to the first Munster derby for Treaty Football Club. So thank you very much, Sean. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Preview.